Evening, Canby. Welcome to the July 17th City Council regular meeting. If you'll please stand for actually a moment of silence this evening, and then the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on our agenda this evening is proclamation for the Canby Fire District number 62 Fill the Boot Day. Whereas Canby Fire District number 62 has been working with the Muscular Dystrophy Association in their fight against neuromuscular disease, and whereas Fill the Boot is an opportunity for Oregon firefighters to ask community members to drop donations into their fire boots to help local families served by MDA in the state. This year marks the 65th anniversary of the partnership between firefighters and MDA in the fight against muscle wasting diseases. And whereas Canby Fire District number 62 has spent many hours collecting money on the streets for this campaign, and whereas firefighters locally and nationally are the largest contributors to the MDA, Canby firefighters collected $10,890 in 2018 to help in the fight against the 43 different types of neuromuscular diseases. Now, therefore, I, Brian Hodson, by the virtue of authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Canby, do hereby proclaim Saturday, August 3rd, 2019, as Canby Fire District number 62 Fill the Boot Day for the city of Canby, given unto my hand the 17th day of July, 2019. We got two of Canby's finest here in the back. Maybe Matt, you get to collect this one.
He drew the straw.
Thank you, sir. You want to take one and say a few words? Great.
Thank you, Council. Every year we raise a little bit more money, and our partnership with MDA grows stronger and stronger, and we're getting better and better at this each year. The community knows us better each year about this, and we appreciate for those who are moving through town who might be in a little bit of a hurry to take about 3.5 extra minutes and dig through their wallet and their change and go ahead and put it in the boot. So we really have a good time at it. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Next on the agenda is Friends of the Library check presentation.
But not yet.
Well, I guess you have your own agenda.
Then I will sit back down
Just say,
until it's time to
Because
So anxious.
hiring Counselor Hike started off as a friend of the library board member. And she did wonderful work for us there as well as for the city. This is just my own personal thank you. Do you want it all over again?
Yes.
Because Counselor Tracy Height started off as a Friends of the Library board member, and because she has done such a wonderful job with us on the Friends board, and because she's done a wonderful job representing various members of the community on this board, this is just my personal thank you. But every one of the friends would agree that thank you, Tracy. You've done good. I think everybody knows that the Friends of the Canby Public Library is there simply to provide money for the operation of programming within the library. And every year, we commit to raising some money to support the programming in the library. For the fiscal year 2018-19, which just ended on June 30th, I wasn't here to be able to give you the check for the last portion of that fiscal year donation, but we're making up for it tonight. And just so people know what we do, there is what we call the book garden inside the library, and we sell books. We sell books for 50 cents. Sometimes we give books away. We sell books for $1. We sell books for $3. It all depends on the book, how rare it is, and what is going on. In order to raise the money to supply the library for the funding of the programs, we have to sell a lot of books, and those books are donated by community members. And we are blessing all of them because they do such a wonderful job in donating those books to us. So we thank them, and right now, I would like to give you the check for the 2018-2019 fiscal year, which is $17,881.24. That's a lot of $1 books.
That is a lot of $1. Thank you.
But it's more than But don't go too far
I
away,
won't, I'm gonna step right over here.
because the Friends know how important teens are and how important it is to have a place for teens to go and have a place where teens feel safe and where there's something for them to do. We have put a lot of effort and a few dollars into the teen room to finish it off in the way that the teens asked. So Brian, I'd like to show you that this last fiscal year, the Friends of the Library donated, we took $10,528.28 out of our coffers to finish the items that need to be done in the teen room. Oh, and I have another one down here.
Well, you can stay all night.
Well, I have to tell you, it all comes with something. We do more than sell books. But one of the things we have never done before is giving away something. And this Saturday, from 1 o'clock until 3 o'clock, right out here, we are doing an ice cream social. And the ice cream social is for the kids that are in the summer reading program. And Saturday also happens to be the last day kids can sign up to be in the summer reading program. So that's one of our giveaways. But one of the reasons we are able to make these kind of donations are because we do a couple of other events. And right now, we are selling tickets for the Great Backyard and Patio Tour. This is the second year that we're doing this event. The tickets are for sale in the library and across the street at Cutsforth Market. They're $15, and that will get ticket holders into 5 unusual, gorgeous backyards to show how people live in their yard. It's not a garden tour. It's a backyard and patio tour, and it's great. So I expect every one of you to go and buy at least one ticket, okay? Now, for the rest of what we do, we have a December event, which is our Christmas tour of homes, and I think this year is going to be our 6th. So don't be shy when I come around and say, we want you to buy tickets for that too, because that goes into what we're doing. Because this fiscal year, we have committed to spending $22,500 on programming for the library. That's a bunch of money, kids. You gotcha. We can't do it alone. We need your support. So when you talk to somebody and they're not doing anything on Saturday, tell them to come to the ice cream social. When they're not coming 2 weeks from now, tell them to come to the great backyard and patio tour. Thank you.
Before we move on, Joyce, for you and for all of the Friends of the Library, thank you. That is, I'm overwhelmed, actually. That whole group has done a tremendous amount for our library, not from, as you said, programming and activities, but addressing the needs of the teen room. That was huge. And we've seen what that investment has done in our community from our teens. I know your
I was
son.
going to say, can I say something too before, Show scoots out before my council liaison report.
So, yeah.
I
jump in.
we serve together on the Suicide Prevention Task Force, and I just want to express my appreciation for everything that the Friends does for that team room, because especially right now, it's so important, so thank you.
Yes. And it's just 10 old ladies that are doing it. And here's one.
Well,
Thank
if we go and check the annuals of Canby's history, there's been a lot that has been formed and done and completed in the city of Canby because, as you stated, I'm just repeating what you said, a group of old ladies got together and put their minds together and got a whole lot of stuff done. So thank you for continuing to get together and getting stuff done. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce.
Okay, all right, well, we're figuring that out there. We're going to move into the next piece, which is an update or a presentation of the upcoming 2020 census.
Hello, Mayor, City Council.
Hi, welcome
How are
again.
you?
Thank you. If you could pass these around.
We are happy to have you.
Thank you for,
Every one of us twice.
well, thank you
But
very
not when we
much. I
vote.
know this is
Don't listen.
a little bit later than I think we had originally talked about trying to get this done, so I appreciate your patience and getting on our agenda for this. This is, as Councilor Parker said, count us twice. This is a very important census for a lot of reasons, and so we're very anxious to have you fill us in and how we can help make sure that everyone gets counted.
Maybe there's a different clicker. Let's try it this way.
Joey, you are a resident
Joe?
techie.
Little help?
I make no promises.
Yeah, the presentation's over there, but it just doesn't seem to
Okay,
be.
now double click on that and see what happens.
Try the other clicker button. There.
Huh. Well, maybe it's this guy.
Always fails uses.
There it is.
that.
Okay.
Okay, that's in the, if we go down to the actual format down at the bottom, so it's on.
There? Which one would you
Yes,
like? Normal?
actually, this one right here.
Oh,
Yeah, we don't need to edit it.
okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Yay, Joe.
Hello, my name is Sarah Bashore. I'm a resident of Clackamas County, and I also work for the U.S. Census Bureau. I wanted to give you a presentation tonight on the 2020 census because there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to be occurring with our next decennial census. Why do we do the census? It's actually required in the Constitution that every 10 years we do a decennial census. So every 10 years, we have to organize a large group of people to work together to count everyone. The main reason why we do the census is for the 435 seats that are in the House of Representatives. It also has to do with the reapportionment and electoral colleges at the state level. It has to do with redistricting of school board or school boundaries, political boundaries. But This was all back in the past as the 435 seats and the importance of it. Now today, most people would agree that the key reason why the census is necessary is for the funding. Altogether, $883 billion goes back to the states every year. Of that amount, Oregon's share is $13.5 billion. That flyer I just handed out to you contains the information of where that $13.5 billion goes. It goes to the school lunch program, Section 8 housing, the voucher program, WIC, SNAP, highways, hospitals, everything. This is the money that we use for our social services that makes us a better community. If we were to take that $13.5 billion and try to figure out how much it is per capita, it's estimated to be approximately $3,200. It's not mathematically correct to say that if we undercount that we would lose $3,200 a person because there's other variables involved, but it is a rough estimate of how much we would lose per person per year. With the decennial census, we only do this once. There are no do-overs. If we don't get it right, we have to live with the results for a 10-year period. Right now, we are living off of the results from the 2010 census. Our goal is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place, except in Canby, where we're going to count everybody twice, according to the mayor. To do this, what is our challenge? In 2020, there are approximately 330 million people living in 140 million housing units. Now, why do we care about a housing unit? Because that's where we mail the information to. Okay? So talking about the information that we mail, we're going to be mailing the information a total of 5 times, and we call it an invitation. By the time you get your 5th invitation, you're not really thinking it's going to be a very fun party. But that's the way it works. We actually send out the information 5 separate times. The first 3 times, it's just information about going in through the internet or over the phone. So, in fact, I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me just back up. Let's just talk real quick about in Oregon. The estimates are 4.2 million. In the city of Canby, using 2017 statistics, there's approximately 17,817 people living in 6,400 housing units. So everyone will get something in the mail. Okay, now I kind of got ahead of myself. So starting March 23rd, we're going to be changing how we do everything. For the past 20 years, what we did is we sent out the short form. And we kept sending it to you over and over again, and then you would mail it back, and we would have a data processor input the information, then we would have to check it. So in 2020, what we're going to ask, the first 3 invitations ask you to go over the internet to the census website and to do the reporting over the website. We will also have toll-free numbers available so that you can just call in to give the information. On the 4th time that we send the information to you, we will include the short form at that point in time. The 5th time we send you the information, it's just basically a warning that if you don't respond very quickly, we are going to send out an enumerator, which is a fancy word for a census taker. So really there's 4 ways that it's going to be happening starting March 23rd. Ideally, everyone will use the internet or the phone because those are the most cost effective, and that's where we save taxpayer money. If we have to do the paper, it's going to take longer and we're not going to get real-time results. If we have to have people go out and do in-person interviews, our costs will skyrocket. The languages. When you go in over the internet or over the phone, the first thing on the internet, the drop-down will give you the option to go into one of 13 languages in order to self-report. Okay? So we are providing a lot of languages to help people who are not necessarily English-speaking. If you go over the phone, we also have operators that speak 13 languages. If we send out the form to you, it will be both in Spanish and in English. We have Braille, all kinds of different things to try to help people who might have difficulty because of the language. When an enumerator goes out, let's just say that someone speaks Mandarin Chinese, for example. In the 59 language cards, Mandarin Chinese is there. So we have the initial 13 languages plus an additional 59 languages to help get a complete and accurate count. What do we ask? Question number 11, we can erase. We're no longer going to be asking the citizenship question. But what do we ask? We ask for the name address, phone number, a gender. So if whoever is going to be filling out the form will need to give us not only their name, phone number, and address, but also the names and the birth dates of all of their children. The reason why we do that is because we want to validate the information to make sure that we don't over-report. Whoops. Oh, let's just go to question number 9, whether someone lives somewhere else. If you happen to have children that are in college that live in a dorm, for example, we are actually going to count them at the dorm under group enumeration. The normal rule that we follow is, where do you live most of the time? So if you live in Canby most of the time, that's where you're going to use as your residence. If you have a beach house down at Seaside, unless you live down there most of the time, you're going to show that you are a resident of Canby. If you're in a college dorm and you have children that are in the college dorm, then they are going to be under group enumeration and you would not count them because they do not live with you most of the time. If you had a foreign exchange student, for example, who came over from another country and was living with you, you would be able to count them because they are in your home. Nowadays, we have something that's called a sofa sleeper, what is that, where someone sleeps on the sofa and they
Couch surfer?
surfing? Yes. If you have a couch surfer and they are there on April 1st, you could count them in your count. April 1st is the actual date that we use for the census count, okay? So let's give another example. You have parents that are divorced and they have equal custody of the children. It's where does that child sleep on April 1st? That's how you determine who would count the kids. So I'm going to give you an unusual example in number 9 as well. If you were to get arrested, let's say in Multnomah County, under group enumeration, you would be counted in Multnomah County, even though you live in Clackamas County. So try not to get arrested in Multnomah County on April 1st. It's got to happen, keep it local. Everything we do is private and confidential. Title 13 requires that we keep all personally identifiable information confidential. Let's just talk very quickly about what happened back in World War II. During World War II, the Department of Defense came to the Census Bureau and asked for information on Japanese Americans. We gave that information. We gave personally identifiable information. Using that information, Japanese Americans in Oregon were arrested and they were detained in the camps, okay? And then the Census Bureau lied about it, said we didn't do it, and we repeatedly lied about it. It wasn't until the Freedom of Information Act and 2 separate presidents acknowledged that we did give the personally identifiable information that it truly came to light. So that is a little bit of our dark history. Now let's go for, and after that happened, approximately 2 years later, Congress tightened Title 13 and forbid the release of any personally identifiable information. But let's move forward to 2001 and the 9/11 attack. Again, law enforcement asked the Census Bureau for information on Arab Americans living in the New York area. We refused to give the information and the courts upheld the Title 13. We did not give out any personally identifiable information. The information that I'm going to be going through with you in a few minutes is the information that is available over the internet at a website, our census website, but it is not personally identifiable. Everything that we give out is at a census tract level. Just keep in mind a census block is like a city block. A census tract usually is made up of about 30 blocks, so it's a much larger area. Okay, so we're just giving demographics, but we do not give out the raw information. The hard-to-count populations is why I'm here today. Most people, I would dare say everyone in this room will do what they're supposed to do. They'll go over the internet, or they'll call, or they'll complete the form. However, there are some people who just don't want to do it for a variety of reasons. And so we've come up with the categories of this. And you can see that there's 7 different categories, and we're going to go through them step by step. The first, let's talk about the city of Canby. All the demographics that I'm going to be using are based upon your population count of 17,337. That's from the American Community Survey. It's an estimate from 2017. Your seniors, approximately 18.2% of the people who live in Canby are seniors over the age of 62. We have to worry about those who may be, who stay home all the time. Maybe people who use Meals on Wheels. as an example. So we will be contacting Meals on Wheels throughout the state of Oregon asking for their assistance. We will also be asking for assistance with your senior centers, asking that I be invited to talk at your senior centers so that we can educate seniors on the importance of completing the census. Most times, if you tell a senior that it's their civic obligation because it's in the Constitution, they'll do as they're supposed to. It's also legally required. Children under the age of 5.7% of your population is in this demographic. There's a couple of interesting things that go on here. Sometimes we have an overcount and sometimes we have an undercount when it comes to children, particularly of divorced parents, because both might count or neither may count. But the really big issue that we're facing in the 2020 census is the second one, because so many people are raising, so many grandparents are raising their grandchildren. And if they live in an age-restricted house, for example, and a grandparent is there with their kids and an enumerator comes, a lot of times they're afraid that they're not supposed to be raising those children, particularly if it's an age-restricted housing unit. They're afraid we may tell the landlord, for example, or that the grandparent or the grandchildren may get into trouble. This is something that has become more and more prevalent. We do not make any judgment calls on whether or not children are there. We just want to make sure that we get a complete and accurate count. Another reason why we don't get an accurate count with children under 5 is just a byproduct of the parent not responding. If a parent doesn't respond and they have 2 or 3 children, then those 2 or 3 children are also not counted. Renters, your demographic here is actually very good. In the state of Oregon, it's about 60-40. I've actually seen where it's been 50-50, so you guys are right on the mark where it comes to renters. Keep in mind, about 33% of your constituencies are renters, and they are harder to count for a variety of reasons, mainly because they are more transient, frequent movers. They tend to have less community involvement, and we also are concerned about apathy. So if you have someone who are renters and also have a lot of children under 5, then that demographic increases dramatically as far as finding people that are going to be harder to count. The homeless count. We're using point-in-time statistics, which are notoriously low. I assume all of you are familiar with who Point-in-Time is and what they do. They provide HUD with information on how many homeless there are so that HUD can reimburse for them. So in 2017 in Clackamas County, they showed 497. We believe that to be a significantly lower figure because of the amount of forms that have to be filled out in order for HUD to take the information and to count them. But I did want to point out that in 2010, there were only 22 homeless living in Clackamas County, according to the 2010 census. Now there are 497. It's a little surprising. Migrant workers, there are approximately 2,000 migrant workers. Our task will be to figure out where the migrant workers are when the fruits and the nuts actually are ready to be picked. They could be virtually anywhere in the state. It's going to be difficult to find them. We will be reaching out as we get closer to that time to find out if you guys are seeing a lot of migrant workers in your area. The foreign-born residents, this is not really a bad demographic for you guys. We have 619 that are naturalized citizens. You do have to expect that the 1,139 not U.S. citizens will not want to complete the census. So if you take the 1,139 and you times it by $3,200 times 10, that's a lot of money that we lose out on. It's because of distrust of the federal government and a variety of other reasons. A lot of times if we just explain to them that it is a constitutional requirement, then they're probably going to be more likely. But if you look at the Hispanic population and Latino population, with everything that's going on, we do have to expect that it's going to be much more difficult to count the foreign-born residents this time around. Internet concerns. Because 2020 marks the first time that the internet and phone options will be used for self-reporting, we are expecting a large multitude of problems. Familiarity, accessibility, the system security itself, and then the trust with the information. Recently, I met with the cities of Monmouth and Independence, and I talked with a woman who was on the school board, and she said that even for the school lunch program, that many parents are not completing the forms because they're concerned that those forms will be turned over to law enforcement. They lost $50,000 last year in their school lunch program because the parents are afraid to fill out the form. We're going to have those same concerns with the census. The state of Oregon, if you look at that, the top blue color, that is actually part of Clackamas County, but there are only 197 residents in there. So it's not really a substantial demographic. That bottom blue area contains 4,000 people. That is Warm Springs Indian Reservation. Now let's look at Canby. You guys are actually in pretty good shape, all in all. Your blue is a light blue, so congratulations. We expect that your hard-to-count community won't be as hard to count as we expect. Sometimes I see a lot of blue. So Canby should be, for the most part, we should get what we need as far as a complete and accurate count. So again, let's just go through the hard-to-count populations. Seniors, what are we going to do to make sure that they all get counted? Children under 5 and renters. Then the foreign-born, those are going to be the big issues for us. We have reached a partnership with the Oregon Library Association and the State Library. We are going to be working with them, and we'll be having hubs at all of the libraries where they'll be able to use the computers. We're going to try and get people like the Friends of the Library and Library Board and other people to help us to make sure that when someone comes into the library that we can assist them, particularly people who are not accustomed to using the internet. I'm an Oregon Partnership Specialist. My role is to educate, encourage, and engage. I go around to various boards of commissions, city councils throughout all of Oregon and talk about the census. I am your liaison with the U.S. Census Bureau and will be until the census ends in July of 2020. We have what are called complete count committees. Clackamas County is part of a complete count committee, and they are also part of the Tri-County Complete Count Committee, which is also made up of Washington and Multnomah County, because we believe in the Tri-County area that the issues that one has, the others will have as well. Sometimes cities also want to form a complete count committee. That is entirely up to you. If you'd like more information, I'm available to give you additional information on how a complete count committee would work. We do have large and small cities. The city of Forest Grove and Cornelius, for example, they have formed a complete count committee because they're concerned about their migrant workers in Washington County. Independence and Mammoth have formed a joint complete count committee because they have concerns down there as well. It's really your call, but if you'd like additional information, I'd love to give it to you. The last thing I want to talk about is recruiting. It's been very difficult to get the enumerators to apply for the job. Just to get people in general to apply for a job that is seasonal in nature, it is basically a part-time job. We're looking for people who want to apply. It's just going over the census website. You completed the form online. It only takes about 20 minutes. It's a part-time job. You can work anywhere from 10 to 40 hours a week. We train you. We pay for your mileage. We pay you every Friday. It's a good job. You just have to be over 18, and you have to be a federal employee during that time, because you do have to sign, you have to swear to an oath of confidentiality based upon the information that you're going to be giving. And with that, I've completed my presentation, and I would love some questions.
Thank you, Sarah. That was perfect.
That was a pretty complete
I was gonna say, I think I have
presentation.
any
I'm not sure we
questions.
have any.
That was pretty complete.
I guess my only question that I have is how can we as a council help make sure that we're getting those hard-to-reach populations counted and it maybe assuage some of the concerns that are there?
Particularly when you run across someone who is foreign-born, it's important that you talk with them about the census, because they're going to be the hardest demographic nationwide for us to get to. If you happen to go to a senior center, be giving a speech, for example, if you can talk about the census, the main thing is we need people to talk about it. It's going to become a grassroots effort fairly soon, where we'll be going out to community-based organizations and asking for their assistance. But the main thing is just to make sure that everybody is aware that there is a census that is coming and that it is a constitutional requirement. I went into the doctor recently, and she asked me where I was working, and I said the census. When I talked with her about the census, she knew nothing. She's an Oregon resident, a doctor, and she knew very, very little about the census. So how can we expect someone who is from another country to understand that this is something that we do every 10 years? So as you're talking to people, if you have neighborhood associations, as you have community events, if you can talk about the importance of the census, you can invite me back as well to talk with your neighborhood associations if you have neighborhood associations, or to talk with your senior group. There's a lot that I will be doing behind the scenes. As we get closer and we have to do things like group enumeration, I'll be talking with your city recorder and asking for information, and your city manager, about how things will happen, how things will go, okay? But it is a relationship that we're going to have to foster from now through July of 2020 in order to make sure we get a complete and accurate count. If you ever have any questions, the city administrator and the city recorder have my email address. I do just live up in Happy Valley, so I'm fairly close. We now have 8 people like myself in the state of Oregon. For the first 6 months, it was just me, and I was kind of a mad hatter about going everywhere. But things have now calmed down, and I just have the Tri-County area and Umatilla County. Those are my 4 counties that I'm responsible for, so things have lightened up as far as my load. But going after the homeless count, the migrant workers, those are going to be difficult for me. I'll spend a lot of time trying to figure out what we need to do and trying to coordinate efforts, particularly with the counties. Clackamas County has been very gracious about making sure that everyone has been hearing the message. Everything we've asked them to do, they have done. They've been outstanding in that way. We have run into some pushback from some of the rural counties for a variety of reasons. But Clackamas County has been great, and your demographics are good. So I think all in all, everything here should be in pretty good shape.
Good.
But please, contact me anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to Canby.
Any other
Thank you.
questions? No?
No, I'm good,
Thanks,
thanks.
No, Susan, that was perfect. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Thank you.
And again, thank you for your patience in getting on our agenda.
No worries.
It is important, so we'll do our part.
Okay,
Great.
and you'll be hearing from me, and I hope to hear from you.
Great, thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
Finding our city recorder, city administrator.
Communications.
Not right now.
Okay. Next on the agenda is citizen input and community announcements. I have no yellow cards, but if there are any citizens that wish to address the council on non-agenda items, we have yellow cards there in the back. You can fill that out and bring that up and address us as you wish. Seeing none, all right, I'll move into mayor's business. It's been a while. I want to thank Council President Dale for handling the meetings in June. I appreciate it. The joys of life sometimes get in the way. So I have only a couple pages to fill you guys in on. First off, I'd like to invite Scout Nolan Pack to come up front here. I understand that someone's working on some sort of scout item, so we'll have him come up and we'll put him on the spot.
Welcome.
Hi, Nolan.
So Nolan, if you want to give us a brief introduction of who you are, what troop you're with, and what are you working on?
My name's Nolan Peck, and I'm with Troop 882. We meet in the gun club, and I am here to do a merit badge that is citizenship in the community, and one of the requirements is to come to a council meeting, and that's why I'm here.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for being a scout and working on your merit badge. I really appreciate it. And I know having, let's see, I think you go to school with both my boys, so I've watched the hard work you've put into being a scout, and I really appreciate what you're doing. So thank you for being here, and I'll let you off the hot seat here as soon as the newspaper's done taking your picture, so smile big. There you go.
And lucky for you, we don't have a public hearing, so your meeting's short.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you, Nolan, and I understand that you and I are going to get together here next week for a beverage and some conversation, yes? Perfect.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks,
Very
Nolan,
good.
appreciate it. It's a little nerve-wracking for a scout to do that on his own. Usually their whole troop is here, and I usually call out one spokesperson to come do that, so very brave of Nolan to come up and do that. So first off, I want to address just something regarding our boards and committees in relation to some staff pieces. So I need council's assistance regarding balancing boards and committees and workload right now. So with retirement of Matilda Dees, our senior planner, our city recorder taking a position in another city, workload is stretched. So our senior planner, Matilda Dees, did a great job in planning, and she loved working on special projects. And that was her bread and butter, and she loved what to do, loved working on those pieces. So with her moving out into retirement and our planning staff not having the institutional knowledge that she has, it's taking longer to get maybe some of those information pieces gathered. And so what's happening is our boards and committees are going right to our planner, Sandy Freund, and then Ryan Potter, who's an assistant, no, he's associate planner. So they don't have the institutional knowledge that Matilda had, and they are neck deep in a ton of planning regarding some housing pieces that have come up in the last 30 days, some mixed-use stuff that's really time-sensitive that they're trying to get done. So I'm asking for your guys' help as liaisons to your boards to kind of maybe run some interference with their boards to kind of, whether that be helping with maybe some of the institutional knowledge and information that you have, if there's homework pieces that we can help them streamline, directional pieces. For example, last night, talking with the Park and Rec Board, having the chairs of the boards do the agendas, not the staff people. I know that most of the boards are, I think, doing that, but that's just an example of some of the workload pieces that we need to take off of our staff. Really, I think expectation-wise, staff right now, because most of the liaison roles are staffed by Sandy, Ryan Potter, and then Calvin Lesueur, our tourism and economic development specialist. Is that his title?
Yes.
Thank you. So really, they're looking at probably having about 4 to 6 hours a month to really work on some of these projects. So just asking for some patience and maybe even additional ideas from you all on what we can do as counselors to help staff with some of the information load. So I'm open to kind of helping to, I know it's something, Councilor Parker, you and I have talked about, like how do we keep projects moving, even if it's small increments, and not going stagnant or being put on a shelf for long periods of time. So, Councilor Parker, you have some thoughts?
Well, I do, and I'm not pleased we find ourselves in this situation. You know, a couple of you may remember that 6 years ago, when we only had 2 building permits, I said now would be an excellent time for us to do a comp plan review, get some of our master plan. It didn't. We didn't do any of that, and now we're neck deep in land use applications. We don't have capacity. So that doesn't make any sense. We're not going to do it when it's slow. We can't do it when it's fast. I'd be happy to tell my liaison folks, to back off. But I think they're going to say, what's the plan?
Sure.
The one issue that I brought with you was that one of the main goals of the bike committee, which is to extend the bike trail to Molalla, has been dropped completely. That has not been reassigned according to our associate planner. And that, in his words, the long-term planning has been taken off the table because of the day-to-day stuff. And, I've quoted my dad before, if you're only going to focus on day-to-day stuff, you're never going to get to the long-range stuff. So I need a plan for how we're going to do this. Do we just wait until the next recession and have our staff be available and then go through it again? Do we reconvene the budget committee and re-scrunch the numbers and hire some more people? I'm fine with participating in a plan, but I'm not okay with just saying, stop doing stuff for an indeterminate amount of time and we don't have a plan to ever get things back on track. I'm going to be an advocate for the future, and we're never going to build that trail between here and Molalla. It's going to take 10 years, even if we went full speed ahead. But we're never going to do these things if we don't have some advocacy for it. So I hear you. I know we're neck deep in a number of things, but I still need a plan to say, okay, I can get behind it.
Okay, so I guess, so, and I'm not saying that, and Rick and I have had a lot of conversation about this, I'm not saying it's a stoppage of liaison stuff.
Well, then you need to be more specific on exactly, what we do. If you're saying prepare, if you're saying have the chairs prepare the agendas, okay, that's something concrete. But just an amorphous back off a little bit, have patience, that's not really going to get us where I think you're asking us to be.
And that's what I'm asking from us as the liaisons and as a council, what things can we take on, or are there things that we can help in terms of staff piece, or what can we ask the boards to do? Is that like, for example, with the Park Advisory Board last night, talking with them about not chasing every shiny penny that comes up because that's the latest thing, right? So I asked them back in June about looking at the park master plan, and the conversation was, well, we have the master plan, why don't we just work from that? But there's been no rhyme or reason of what we've gone from splash pad now to Wayside to Ackerman to all these, we're hodgepodging and, hopscotching from project to project. So I guess, do we have an opportunity with our boards and committees to help focus that better in going, here's our next project, here's how many steps we think it is, or can it be broken down even further and go, great, this is our step, what can we do as a board, what do we need staff to do? And if staff needs time, then staff needs to be able to say, well, you know what, I need 60 days to get you that information, and then the boards and committees just, they need to work with, that's the planning, I guess I'm asking what we can take back to the boards so that Rick and I can help devise that plan. I mean, the end game goal is for me then to reach out to the boards and committees and say, and ask for their help as well.
Right, and I remember talking with you at the beginning of the year that this was going to be the year that you were going to put some energy into refocusing
the boards,
having training and that sort of thing. We're halfway through the year, and I worry that that may be interpreted by the boards and committees is to back off the accelerator and don't do planning. I think what might be helpful, at least from my standpoint of going back to my liaison folks, is, and as well as a unified message, is some actual talking points.
Okay.
Instead of each of us separately interpreting this, me going back and crankily saying to my folks, well, the mayor told us not to do anything until we hear back from. But in order for us to have a unified message on this, I think that's important. And knowing the bike committee, because they are working on some timeframes of trying to build a 6-month, 12-month, 16-month agenda, is knowing when there are going to be resources available.
And the last thing, and I think I appreciate you saying, I don't want us to crankily go back to our boards and tell them to stop, and that's where I'm trying to engage us in a dialogue on what things can we ask of the boards to do. That's before.
But see, that only works if you draw a circle around it and say you're going to need to operate within these constraints. Because I'd go back to my liaison boards and they say, okay, fine, but here's 3 things that we want researched and we want help with, and the historic landmark commission, which is cranking up between 2 and 3 grant applications a year.
Yeah.
So do you want them to interpret that as not pursuing that many? Because it does require Calvin to actually finish the paperwork and submit it. So a more precise ask, I guess, is what I'm asking for. Am I being too dense on this, or does anybody else feel that same way?
Actually, I would agree with Councilor Parker in that we need a unified message and basically bullet points and what we need to say to our liaison chairs. For example, the Traffic Safety Commission that I'm liaison to, we utilize a lot of staff time for planning and public works, and I know both of those departments are already really restricted in their availability. Jerry does a great job, so does Sandy, coming to the meetings and taking in the information, but I realize that when they go back to their real job, they probably don't have a lot of time to get on each task. But they have a heart to, and I appreciate that. But yeah, if we knew, I mean, the commission itself would be able to work within whatever parameters we're given, and we just need to know what those are.
Or is it possible to just cut the number of, I'm just going to throw this out, cut the number of committee meetings, like maybe it's every other month for 6 months until we're back, in full staff mode or something, and just run the meetings more efficiently? I don't know. I'm not sure how much is really backlogged on their agendas or how much they stick to the agendas, but I thought I'd throw that idea out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I do have to say that we're not going to be at full staff mode in 6 months. We're at the staff that we're going to be at, unless you want to take additional funds out of our reserves and apply them to this specific purpose. And that's something that I wouldn't recommend to you, because I think that you would be having some short-term gains at the expense of some fairly traumatic long-term impacts. The result being you may not be able to even accomplish those things that that our employees were hired to do. And that would be the worst possible outcome that any of us could handle, could live with, could absorb. So from my perspective, I think one of the things that's going to be important to express to the committees is that if they identify a priority, that they stick with that priority and not bring up, maybe 3 applications is too many, because the staff person that has to staff that particular committee simply doesn't have the capacity. And I will tell you, the staff person that staffs that committee doesn't have the capacity. He's already spoken with me 3 times in 2 days. And we can't afford to lose our quality people because we're giving them tasks and responsibilities that take them beyond their capacity to fulfill the duties and responsibilities that they're given as primary duties and responsibility, let alone being able to staff committees. And understand that if we're looking at 4 to 6 hours a week to do follow-up, that doesn't include the time that is going to be required of that staff person to attend the committee meetings themselves. So now you're at a minimum of 1 day a month. And that starts to have an impact on an individual's ability to perform their own jobs, particularly in the summertime, for those persons that are both in planning and our economic and community development programs, because those are the busiest times of the year typically. We're in an unprecedented growth period, and almost exclusively because of the state changed the rules about annexation 3 years ago. And now we've gone from a managed growth platform to just free-for-all. And our staff has somehow been able to absorb that dramatically, exponentially increased demand on their time. And I wouldn't be doing my job if we're not having this conversation today, and I'm not expressing to you my opinion that there is a breaking point, and staff feels a duty and responsibility to respond to their primary responsibility. If it's planning, it's applications. If it's economic community development, it's outreach. It's program development, it's putting on the 4th of July parade and activities and our Canby's Big Weekend and Light Up the Night and all of those other functions that are so important that we've identified collectively as critical if we want to maintain a sense of community during a time of unprecedented growth. Now, if we're not interested in that, which I don't think is the case, then that's a policy change and a policy directive. But right now, my primary goal, and I told you on day one, I'm telling you again today, is to find a way to maintain a sense of community and a cohesiveness among the residents in this community during the time of this unprecedented growth. And for me, I think we can accomplish some very positive things working in the committee system that we have. I think that the number one responsibility that we have and that you have as policymakers, that I have as the director at administrative level of this organization, is to communicate to the committees that our bandwidth is limited, and so they need to really identify priorities, speak to that committee member, and determine what the time constraints are going to be, what the requirements are going to be to accomplish a particular task. And if it's 6 months to be able to get an application out, then we get 2 applications out a year and not 3. And I think that those are the key elements, is that ability to communicate. And I depend on council liaison to the committees to help guide those committees, not in making an ultimate decision, but in understanding what the limitations are of staff, because I have that conversation on a pretty routine basis with all of you in trying to remind you of the challenges that we're facing. And so you're not unaware of that. And it's important that that message also be relayed to the committees so that they understand that they need to identify a priority and not 10, and not jump around to 3 or 4 different ones in one night and expect staff to be able to deliver something the very next month that's going to meet all of the objectives that the committees wish to meet. We have a situation in, and I think it's an excellent example, in our Traffic Safety Commission, where we have members of that commission that go out and do a lot of that work. And that commission is successful because, for the most part, the process is so focused that committee members go out and gather information, they bring it to the committee, they talk in advance to people that are bringing issues to them so that they have a clear understanding of what those issues are. And then when they come to using the Transportation Safety Commission as an example, when they come to the commission, there's not only an understanding of what the issues are, but the obstacles to achieving that issue or initiative, and potential solutions to solving the problems. But that requires that the committee members take a more active role in gathering information and seeking solutions. That they don't, if the expectation is that a committee member shows up on the assigned night, sits through a 2-hour meeting, talks about all the things that are important, and then tells the staff person to go out and accomplish great things, then we can't be successful. I think that the outcome has to be driven internally, and I think that staff does have a direct responsibility, but I also think that we need to place more emphasis on delivery of our volunteer committee members.
Well, let's take the Molalla Logging Road situation. That when Matilda was here, there were 3 people who met. There was the planner from the city of Molalla, there was the planner from Clackamas County, and there was the planner from the city of Canby. So are you suggesting that the third person be a committee member? Because that drastically changes the structure from employees of 2 jurisdictions to employees of 2 jurisdictions and 1 person. Because that's a conversation we've never had before.
And that's a great example. And what I'm suggesting is that if that trail is the top and number 1 priority for that particular committee, that committee relay that information to the staff person and say, okay, this is what we want you to spend your time on.
And they did.
And we're not going to throw 10 other things
And he said
at you.
this portfolio has been tabled for the time being.
Well, okay, I'm not aware of all that, but
I relayed that to the mayor.
okay.
That Matilda, that my information was that Matilda's long-term planning, according to our associate planner at the last bike committee, hasn't been reassigned, that they're just doing the day-to-day development work.
And that's true,
Okay,
because Matilda's been gone for 3 weeks.
right.
Or 2 or 3 weeks. But, so that's true. I have not reassigned that responsibility. But I also haven't heard from that committee that that's their top priority, and that's what they want to focus their energy on, because the first step that we would do is identify what resources would be necessary, and I will tell you that outside consulting services would be the first thing that I would be recommending to follow up on the extension of our logging road trail. The ability, we know that right now today, we don't have the ability to connect Canby to Molalla. There are missing links in that path that everybody envisions for the future. If that's a top priority, then the next step would be to come to the council and say, are you willing to spend whatever amount of money needs to be spent?
That's new information. That's a new process. We've never, in the 9 years I've been here, we've never done that. But if that's the way it's going to be, I'm okay with that.
Well,
But I don't understand what the new world is like. And lest anybody think that there's acrimony here, Rick is absolutely doing the right job. He's doing his job of making sure things get done. I like to think I'm doing the right job, which is being an advocate for the future and for my committees. And I don't have an answer, but I am worried about us getting into this death spiral where our staff, planning staff, is only working on development work, and the parts of this city that work on the livability of it is being ignored.
Okay.
So I think I'm glad you brought this up. I'm still not exactly sure what to tell my liaison group. The Historic Landmark Commission is getting ready to submit another grant.
I know they are.
So, are you telling me to tell them to not do that? Because I think that would be a huge demotivator for somebody who over the last 2 years has brought in $50,000 worth of grants.
I understand that. I don't have an answer for that question yet. I don't have enough information to respond appropriately to it. But what I am suggesting is that it's important that we prioritize the deliverables that we would expect our staff to provide, and that we be realistic in those expectations so that the outcome can be positive and can be successful. The old adage, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, applies here. And if the elephant that we want to eat is the extension of the logging road trail, then we say, okay, this is the elephant in the room, and we want to eat him. And what's it going to take to accomplish that? And that's where we start. But if we say, we've got 6 elephants, we're going to talk about all of them this month, and we want you to gather a little information on each of these 6 elephants. I will tell you, as you well know, that none of the elephants are going to get eaten, because we're going to get full, and then we're going to get sick of the elephant, and then we're all going to forget where we were and go back and start becoming vegetarians again. I don't know, something different. But we want to accomplish what our objective is, and that is to be able to actually put a successful project in the book. You know that as I lay out my goals and objectives to you each year, I'm very specific. I want to accomplish this, I want to accomplish this. If you add to these goals and objectives, we're going to have to look at what we can delete, because there are only so many hours in a 12-month period. And if we go beyond that, then we have to start subtracting. And the same holds true, only when we're working with staff to a committee, the hours are even smaller because they have other primary responsibilities.
So Rick, would it be an exaggeration to say that for the next fiscal year, we are looking at a retrenchment and an implosion in our citizen involvement programs?
I don't know. I don't think that that's an accurate representation. I think what we're looking at is a more targeted and focused approach by our committees to identify those elements of their responsibility that have the highest and greatest priority, and then to focus on outcomes associated with that program, or until we're able to reach a successful outcome, or determine that the priority is not achievable for any number of reasons.
So is this the new normal now?
It is, in my opinion. It is, in my opinion, until we can upstaff again. It is, and as I shared with you throughout the budget discussions, this was an extremely difficult budget for any number of reasons, and I'm hoping, I'm guardedly optimistic that we'll be in somewhat better shape next year. I would love to be able to replace the planner position, because I think in the long term we're going to need it. But to do that this year, I believe would be short-sighted and would be foolish.
Well, I'll do my share, but I just want to be on record, Mayor, that I think it's a mistake for us to abandon our long-range planning. That all of us have had a chance to be at groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings, and it's because of the work that citizen groups did 20 years ago that we've been working on the successes. And I think that there are things, and Rick's absolutely right, the Molalla Logging Road connection is a long way off, but you don't get there without some planning. So let me process this and see how I can help.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Other comments on this? And I appreciate the dialogue. Rick and I have some things that we obviously need to iron out, because my objective is taking the information from all of you. Rick and I will break this down even further or whatever, and then get something to you that then we can then get onto the boards so that they're aware. Just, again, as an ask. It's not a stop doing what you're doing. Maybe it's just a different way of doing what we're doing. So,
Well, given that, Traffic Safety Commission members have done a lot of their own legwork, right, from surveying door to door for a project to getting easements for, they do a lot of things. So if each board knew what kind of tasks they could do to be helpful, that would be helpful for them.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and anybody can make a goal. You can make a goal to connect Canby to Molalla, and you can print it up and put it on a nice glossy thing, and that's this council's goal. But it takes a different kind of effort to actually be able to deliver on those goals. And what I have seen of this council in the 5 years that I've been here is that you took other people's dreams and you turned them into reality. And that, in my 35 years experience, is the most difficult thing to do. I can give you pipe dreams all day long that are wonderful and would turn this community into something even more beautiful than it is now, but I can't deliver on those. There's no way. And I think that the difference between being able to think of something that's great and actually being able to accomplish it is very, very significant. And I just, Councilor Parker and I have actually discussed this on a couple different occasions. You know, I think it's easy to put a goal on the wall. I think it takes incredible fortitude to actually be able to deliver on what you put on a wall 10 years ago. And if this group of leaders didn't step up and say, this needs to be accomplished, and we don't care how it gets done, it needs to be done, you know, ethically, appropriately, and with the right attitude, but we want this done. It doesn't matter how good the ideas are, they're just not going to get done. And so I don't want to leave this topic with the thought that this council and previous councils haven't really achieved anything because they haven't set goals. You've achieved more than most councils will in a lifetime. And I think that that's something that you should be proud of.
thank you.
Thank you.
Great dialogue. We're still on mayor's business?
You're still on
We are.
business, even though it's dialogue.
I do have 3 more pages.
Let's see.
Good. Just pop some popcorn. Park and Rec Advisory Board, I just want to let everybody know, so we had a splash pad conversation last night. We had 3 proposals come in, and after rating those proposals and whatnot, we're looking at, and Rick has reached out to the company that the Park Advisory Board thought rated out the best, and it's 2KG Contractors Incorporated. So we're moving ahead with the splash pad piece that's going at Maple Street Park. So 2KG, I think the plan is to get with them either next week or the following week to move into the contract and then talk about the project and start moving forward with that. So they have in their proposal a pretty aggressive schedule to be able to have the splash pad built and ready to go Labor Day weekend, Memorial Day. Memorial Day 2020. So we're going to move fast on this project, and so there's pieces that we're going to get ironed out and get going on that. So that was taken care of. Update on the Ackerman Field project. So there's been a while on that. So changes, last time we talked, finalized, seen the final plan, kind of the price tag came in higher than I think some of us, at least what I anticipated.
But you have a number of things.
We have a number to go after, right? So the number that came back was around 14 million to do that project. So since that conversation, there's been 2 new board members added or changed out on the school board, which has changed some of the dialogue there at the school board. So they're kind of taking a step back right now to determine what's the long-term needs for the school district and how does the Ackerman building play into that. So right now we're kind of in a holding piece on that end and a holding piece on the funding piece. So I will throw this caveat out there just to keep you all in suspense that there will be another conversation that we will have about funding in a future meeting. And I will just leave it at that, just to keep everyone engaged on that piece. So that's all that I have on the park advisory front. The Region 1 Area Commission on Transportation. So the August 5th meeting for that is going to be here in Canby. So all 30 board members of the Region 1 Act will be coming here to Canby. We'll be hosting it here across the hall. And the plan is that to do a tour of transportation, hopes, dreams, wants, and desires in this area in the first, late afternoon before the meeting. So we're going to take them to both the industrial park, show them the idea, the concept of the Art Road I-5 tie-in there, take them to out where we're looking to tie into 99 from the industrial park, and also run them, show them 99E, possibly down to Aurora, up to the tunnel in Oregon City, just to give those that don't get out here that perspective. And then also possibly look at Highway 213 as it comes into the Molalla area, since there's a lot of needs and wants, some safety concerns in that area. So that's tentative tour. Once we iron out those details, I'll let you know. You're all more than welcome to join that meeting if you want to be available. It's 5:30 to 7:30 on August 5th. So, and you can talk transportation with all of us. Clackamas County Coordinating Committee, I don't know how much of the retreat you covered off on, but we did a retreat back in June. 2 big pieces were housing and transportation. The housing needs assessment is almost complete, so we'll be getting a debrief on that here coming up. Some really good information on that. There's a lot of conversation about leveraging the Metro Housing Bond that was talked about and how they're looking at leveraging that in the metro portion of Clackamas County, so Milwaukee, Gladstone, and Oregon City, and Happy Valley. And so there was conversation on that, and then discussion about how does that free up county to look at some of the rural cities, so Sandy, Canby, and Estacada, Molalla, for potential projects in our area. So again, more to come on that. We also had a very long and lengthy conversation about the vehicle registration fee and the special transportation fund. So the vehicle registration fee that the Board of County Commissioners passed, the split is a 60-40 split, 40% going to the cities and 60% going to the county. And so off their amount is set up a special transportation fund, which they think will generate about $1.2 million annually into the special projects fund. And so we're looking at projects that are on the county TSP, so Transportation System Plan, which we have a number of those on there. If there are other, we are going to be looking at the details and to determine if those are projects that we still want to address, or if not, can new projects be added to get queued up for the fund. One of the big pieces was, before to start funding that, obviously, something near and dear to my heart, and I think many in this room, are county roads within city limits. And so that turned into a rather very heated conversation at the retreat, because so we have
To my surprise.
to my surprise, 3.4 miles of county roads within the city, but see, like Sandy has 2 miles, and they have no desire to want to spend any of that special transportation funding money on addressing county roads, because they don't care to take it over, and they want the county to deal with it.
Sunnyside Road.
And Happy Valley has Sunnyside Road. And so that's a whole lot of maintenance for the county to take on, but also, for Sunnyside. So we're trying to work out that angle of it. Do we address those roads first and then start funding the special projects fund, or scrap that entirely? Obviously, I'm not real excited about not having any of those monies go towards, I'm trying to get some of my naysayers to see that if we can get those addressed, then the county's not having to fund or pay for paving and whatnot of the county roads within, it's off their rolls, then they can do a lot of other things, so.
We might should remind them too, it was part of their selling point for our support.
Well, and I have, that is true. I mean, to get some of the city's support on vehicle registration fee, and by support, that's either coming out for or not coming out against the Board of County Commissioners for making that decision. Even Chair Bernard has said that that was a priority for the vehicle registration fee, was to address that. So I'll be anxious to see how the rest of the board kind of falls in that regard. So more regarding that fight to come, so I will keep you posted on that. City administrator search, so we've spent last week going through interviews for Rick's replacement, since he's announced his retirement. We went through from 5 candidates down to 2, and so last Thursday, we did second round of interviews and then held a community meeting and sought feedback, and the council narrowed it from 2 to the 1 that we've gone through. Preliminary background checks and reference checks are coming back positive, as we've heard today from Amanda, our assistant city manager and HR director. So I guess I have an ask if we want to, is this enough information for us to move ahead with giving staff and me permission to move into contract conversations, or do we? I have a tentative meeting scheduled with our candidate on Friday to follow up on some additional items that we had questions about. But since I had you all together, I wanted to see if we wanted to move ahead or wait.
I think unless you have any red flags Friday, go forward.
Yeah, I think based on the preliminary background checks, I think we should, move forward.
Yeah, likewise. We already know our guidelines. You already know the bumpers around the offer. I do encourage caution in making any public announcement as to the candidate until, as we agreed with the recruiter, we have a mutually agreed upon offer sheet.
Okay.
Because that's
Agreed.
when things tend to fall apart.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so,
All right. So, Joe, do we need an official, I mean.
No, that's good. As we discussed, when you go through exec session, the technicality is that you can't make a decision that isn't, you have to come out of exec session and go into open session in order for it to be, have the public see it. It looks a little odd at this point, sorry. But the idea is the same, is that you can have a consensus idea and that, in your decision-making to go forth and negotiate with an offer. And that's enough marching orders for us to then go forth and do that, and the public will know soon enough exactly who we're talking about.
Okay. So for the time being, Carol, I can't give you a name. So we're going to go into negotiations, and
We've learned our lessons.
Joe, I sent you and Amanda about an email about getting together to talk about contract pieces that maybe we need to put together on our end
Okay,
so that we can move forward with that
happy to do it?
sooner than later.
Yes.
So that seems to be the general consensus of council, is to move that direction.
Yes.
Great. A reminder for city council, next Wednesday, we have special meeting to do city council interviews to fill our soon-to-be vacant seat.
7 p.m.?
7 p.m. on the 24th. I see a couple of faces of candidates that are here, so welcome. Also, regarding Rick, August 6th was the meeting with the Planning Commission and City Council. So something that we had asked, so over the last 2 years of all the crazy planning and stuff that we had going on, we created a 3-page document, 4-page?
4-page.
4-page document of planning and code pieces that we asked the Planning Commission to go back and planning staff to go back and take a dive into and start working on, and they've held a number of work sessions, so they've come to a point where there's a couple of pieces, it sounds like there's some policy pieces that we need to discuss, and so August 6th, we're trying to do a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and City Council. So take a look at your calendars and let Rick know if that's a date that, I think we're looking at a 7 o'clock meeting, Rick?
6 to 7:30.
6 to 7:30. So take a look if that is,
On the 7th, is that it?
no, August 6th.
August 6th.
Tuesday, August 6th.
So that's our list, or I thought it was a housing needs study?
This one is the housing needs study. Our list is later.
Sorry, I'm twisted. Thank you, Councilor Parker. This is the housing needs piece.
Yeah, and this is my fault,
Sorry.
because we were talking about both of them together.
Sorry, I missed
So
it,
do we have a date for our list?
They're still working on that part.
but I'm mistaken.
Not good. We've had that in the air for 6 months. And I want a date certain on that.
Okay.
I'm tired of this can being kicked down the road. That in our budget discussions, and several times when we've had really long and difficult planning issues, that we said, here's our list, it needs to be addressed. So
Okay.
I at least need a date instead of saying, and I don't know where this housing needs thing, I guess this came out of nowhere in terms of me, but how it leapfrogged over our list.
Although, Greg, I think the Planning Commission, I mean, they spent hours going
Okay,
through, and so
that's
they,
fine.
most likely, many of our items have already been covered. We'd
That's
have to
fine.
just cross-check with them to see.
Yeah, the Planning Commission has been meeting several times to go
Yeah.
through the list.
Okay.
And
I didn't know that, I thought they had to meet with us before.
After.
Well, they're doing ongoing workshops to address issues on the list and making changes, and our planning staff are bringing back so that they can get a document that looks like it's going to work, and then that'll be subject of a public hearing, then it'll come to you, and if approved, it'll be codified and become part of our Chapter 16 land use.
I just
and
didn't want
housing
that falling between the
No,
cracks.
it's not. It's actively being worked.
Okay.
It's just this other project has some time sensitivity, and we're just trying to get it done within a fairly short window period of time.
Okay, so this is the housing needs assessment,
Yes.
and that's on August 6th at
6 o'clock.
6 to 7:30.
Yeah, and that confusion is mine because the mayor and I were talking about both items, and I think I gave you bad information on what the meeting was.
You and I
Now
have
we know.
done that, so, great. I have now been corrected. Perfect. Housing needs assessment conversation for the sake.
Got it.
Great. The list, the 4-page list is being worked on and being addressed in various non-planning commission agenda, like planning pieces. I know, talking with Brian, they've had 3 mixed housing development requests come in the last couple weeks. They're projecting over 100 housing permits possibly to be pulled this year. So it's definitely a busy time, but the planning commission is working on that list for us. Soon we shall have it. So, great. All right. That concludes my business. I'm glad I brought you guys some good spicy stuff.
That was the longest mayor report, and I don't know how long.
It's been a while.
You are not allowed to miss meetings.
Personal record.
You can elect too much stuff while you're
And
gone.
I crossed off a bunch of stuff off my list.
We appreciate it.
One of the times that the mayor wasn't here, it was at my insistence, because it was the last game of his
That's true.
softball team. And I thought your girls needed you more than we did.
Well, I appreciate that. We'll move into councilor comments and liaison reports. Councilor Height, your last liaison report.
Well, it's rather paltry. I didn't attend any of the committee meetings. I'll say a few words during the presentation
Okay.
of the plaque, however,
You
so
got it.
that's all for me.
All right, Councilor Parker.
All right, well, I'll save some of the routine items. The one thing that I thought is kind of amusing, given the fact that you were just talking about the Ackerman project and the numbers coming back higher. The Fair Board is doing a master plan on several elements to upgrade its facilities out at the event center. And we got our numbers back. And one of them, just for example, are what we had estimated to be a $6 million 30,000 square foot multi-purpose facility is somewhere between $12 and $14 million. So we're dealing with a whole set of numbers out there that are much larger than we anticipated, but now we have the numbers so we can begin taking a look at which ones we want to do first. And the planner who's working with this also gave us a business plan showing us a return on investment so we know which projects would actually return a revenue stream. So in the next 2 years, look forward to some changes and improvements and maybe even new construction out at the fairgrounds.
Very good.
Great. Any other?
That's
just
it for
that?
now.
Okay.
Only so much oxygen in the room, Mayor.
Well, I'm glad that I was able to eat up most of that. Councilor Hensley.
I will also be brief. Just on the 4th of July, we did the pancakes, you and I and Councilor Varwig. That was always a good time. I always love doing that. So it was a fun morning, but I really wanted to just give kudos to Jamie and Calvin and all of the volunteers that do that event. I was walking down the street a couple days after that event, and I come out, as I'm coming down the road past Gwen's, a couple ladies come out of the coffee shop and said, "Hey, you're on the city council." I said, "Yes, I am." And she wanted to just pass on how lovely the event was, and she wanted to say she was very impressed, especially since it was one of the better attended ones. We had so many people come down, and they were just super impressed with the event, and they wanted to pass on their kudos. So I texted Jamie right away, but I just kind of wanted to do a public announcement of congratulations on their hard efforts, because the community really enjoys that event. And also, just quick, I wanted to say thank you to Corey Bowler, who is not continuing on the Traffic Safety Commission. I want to thank him for his work there, and just announce that we are going to be appointing a new Traffic Safety Commissioner at our next meeting. And that concludes for this time.
Great. Thank you very much. Council President Dale.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, at our last Canby Utility Board meeting, we were briefed on the effects on municipal energy utilities like Canby Utility by the latest round of state legislature. To make a long story short, because House Bill 2020 did not happen, we wound up basically with no direct effect on our electric rates coming up, which will be going up in November in response to BPA's very modest, less than 5% increase. Of interest, I did share with our city administrator and our mayor, but of interest to the council, two things that the legislature did that are of some interest to Canby is that solar power installation, panel farms, has been made much, much easier in exclusive farm use areas, which gets a mixed reception depending on where you are in the state, but they have significantly lowered the regulatory barriers and zoning barriers for that. And for those of us that live through constructing a few buildings around here, you're familiar with the 1.5% threshold that we have to reach. 1.5% of our construction budget has to be turned into renewable energy use. We had to do it on this building. We have some panels. They eased the threshold of that somewhat. It now no longer applies to buildings, projects under $5 million. So maybe helps CAT down the road if we were to do a permanent building, for instance. Could be a help to us there. And it really was geared towards the smaller and more rural cities to give them some relief. And they do, interestingly, allow batteries to contribute to that. So storage batteries contribute, and conservation, some amounts of it can help towards that. So it's meant mainly to help cities that are smaller and more rural. And they did finance $2 million in solar panel rebates for residences. So those programs are still out there. Finances for Cub. Normally I don't ever share this with you, but I thought you would find it interesting that both power and water revenues are up and conservation is down. So people are burning more power and using more water and conserving less than they have in past years. Not a lot of explanation unless they just don't feel as much economic pressure to cut back. And they are actually under budget. Greg will find this interesting. They're under budget on SDC income. It's coming in slower than expected. And they're not thinking that it's any kind of a leading economic indicator of a slowdown, as much as the guess is that our local builders are just saturated. They're doing all the work that they can, and we, Cub, maybe have overguessed the rate that they could do things at. But interesting trivia there. Slower. They're building as fast as they possibly can, is the thing.
There is no excess capacity.
There's just no capacity, right? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That's an interesting point, because when my conversation with our planning director, like we had projected, he had projected last fiscal year for the city to exceed 100 housing permits, and we only came in just cracked 80. And he said that, talking with the developers, it was because they're at, they can't get the people power to get their projects going, and that's, so they have land that's ready to build, but they just don't have the contractors and the subs to be able to get out and get them done. So they're seeing, as projects are starting to kind of wrap up in the big city to the north, Portland, that some of that will hopefully free up workers. But yeah, there's a couple of, I think the next wave that they're indicating that might be coming up is, I think there's 4 new hospitals planned for the Portland metro area coming up. So that's going to be, I think, another pull on resources, huge labor pull. So just something to keep in mind.
I have 2 general contractor friends who do not know each other, and they both told me by the end of March they were fully subscribed for the next 12 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Busy time.
Busy times.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Farwick.
Yes, sir. It is always hard to follow Council President Dale. He always sounds so doggone smart when he's talking, and then comes to me, and I just,
It's years of practice, Sean.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
practice.
Yes.
But you can do the shucks then.
So library, as you guys know, is now closed on Sundays due to funding, and hopefully we'll get that figured out here before too long. I know we are working really hard to extend those boundaries. That is a hot priority for the library board, and I know a lot of us as well. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we can get that done before their anticipated, several years from now idea at the county. And so that's library. The library board meeting is next week, so I'll have a better report on the library. I missed last month just due to some family stuff going on. Just so all you know, my daughter's doing okay.
Very good.
Thank goodness.
And then somebody else who is much smarter than me and sounds much more educated than me is going to talk to you about the fire
Here he
board.
comes.
And here comes Chief Davis.
He knows his cues.
Chief.
I promise I will keep it very brief. Councilor Height, thank you for your service. I really appreciate that, the time that you spent for the council and for the city, so thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Just a few changes at the fire district. Jim Mickelson is now off the board, and I just wanted to personally thank Jim. He's a longtime resident, forever resident of Canby, and so it was great having him on the fire board. And he missed very few meetings along the way, and it was always a pleasure to deal with Jim. And his replacement is Sean Carroll. Many of you probably know Sean from serving on the city council years ago. And Sean is retired, has moved back to Canby, and was elected for the fire board. So he'll be sworn in next week at the fire board meeting. And to the citizens and to the businesses of Canby, thank you so much for the donations to this year's fireworks display. I've never seen this was one of the larger ones. The Baker Prairie parking lot was full over in the VIP area. And again, it was a wonderful display. We're pleased to announce that we're about over halfway for next year's, and that's including a $5,000 increase. So thank you to the major sponsors, all the way down to the people that dug in their pockets and put some coin in the little fireworks over at Thriftway, because without that, we can't make it happen. And the good news is, every year that we've been doing this now, we continue to have very few fireworks-related fires and or injuries. We had 2. One was a very small dumpster fire that was out when we got there, and another one was a very small grass fire, which the people had put out, while other fire districts around us were responding like crazy in regards to fireworks-related calls. So we really do feel this is reducing injuries and reducing our fire loss in the Canby and the fire district. And we have been receiving a lot of telephone calls from people asking about open burning. And, as we started our wildland season in March, when things got crazy and we started having substantial fires. And just as of 7:30 tonight, they responded on a brush fire here in the city up on South Redwood. So things are dry, but the citizens of Canby throughout the fire district have been very patient and understanding in regards to holding their stuff off till we get some substantial rain. In the bond issue, we're moving forward, working with the city administrator in regards to the lease of the property, which will be in front of my board next week, and then in front of you in August for the North Side Fire Station, which was very important to the citizens of Canby. And we are working on a temporary modular home to be put up on that property. I've got an architect hired, so we're moving full steam ahead with that. We did the sealing of the bay at the main fire station, as well as the seismic upgrade has been completed, and the painting in the bay. So now we're doing the architectural design for the remodel at the main fire station. So we are making some headway in regards to what we told the citizens we'd do for the bond issue. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
And I will say that the fireworks display was fantastic. We had some friends that came to town, and I bragged to them about how wonderful this fireworks display is, and we got into it, and I said, and a bunch went off, and I was like, and that's the finale. And they're like, that's amazing. And then next thing you know, 10 minutes later, they're still going. So I was wrong. That wasn't the finale. But, even the middle of the display seemed like it was the finale. So.
Well, Ray Cahoot was the person that was actually doing the firing, and one got a little close.
Ray was?
Ray was.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Got a
And,
little carried away.
yeah, he's licensed. And the one before the grand finale, there was supposed to be a little bit of a break, but it kicked off the grand finale too. So it was a great grand finale.
It was a wonderful show. Chief.
One big push. Thanks, Chief.
That's all I have.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. We'll move into the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the minutes of the June 19th, 2019 City Council regular meeting, to appoint Lisa Potter to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board with a term to end on June 30th, 2022, to appoint Jack Pendleton to the Budget Committee with a term to end on June 30th, 2022, and to approve a new off-premises with fuel pumps liquor license application for Thabit Management.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Council President Dale and seconded by Councilor Hensley to approve the consent agenda, which include the adoption of the minutes of the June 19th, 2019 City Council regular meeting, appointment of Lisa Potter to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board with a term to end on June 30th, 2022, appoint Jack Pendleton to the Budget Committee with a term to end on June 30th, 2022, and to approve a new off-premises with fuel pumps liquor license application for Thabit Management. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 5-0. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing, but that has been postponed to August 7th. So we will skip that and we will move into resolutions and ordinances.
And first up,
you, Joe?
yeah, first up for resolutions and ordinances, we have Resolution 1313, a very lucky one, extending workers' compensation coverage to volunteers of the City of Canby and repealing Resolution 1285.
And this is a resolution that you see each year. It is actually very important, provides coverage to our volunteer boards, commissions, including Bike and Ped Committee, the City Council and Mayor, Parks and Rec Advisory Board, Planning Commission, the Transit Advisory Committee, Traffic Safety Commission, as well as non-public safety volunteers and admin library and our Parks and Public Works programs, and for public events, including our Canby Independence Day celebration, our Canby's Big Weekend, Canby Street Dance, and Light Up the Night.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Again, kind of a little boilerplate piece. We do this every year. So housekeeping. Thank you, Councilor Parker. Any questions or comments on this? No, sir. No? All right. I will take a motion, please.
I move to adopt Resolution 1313, a resolution extending workers' compensation coverage to volunteers of the City of Canby and repealing Resolution 1285.
Thank you.
Second.
Also, thank you. Motion's been made by Councilor Varwig and seconded by Councilor Height to approve Resolution 1313, a resolution extending workers' compensation coverage to volunteers of the City of Canby and repealing Resolution 1285. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That passes 5-0.
Next up, you have Resolution 1320, and this is adopting updated capitalization rules and repealing Resolution 780. And Julie Blums, our Finance Director, is here to present.
Good evening.
Good evening, Julie. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Great. Thank you for hanging with us this evening.
Absolutely, nowhere better to be.
I'm sorry.
Yes, there is.
That speaks to my life, right?
It was so kind of you to say that.
So tonight, what I have for you is an updated policy on our capitalization rules for capital assets and infrastructure. I keep overturning things that are really old and we need to update. So this was the latest thing I've found that needs some updating. The old policy was adopted back in 2002 in Resolution 780, and several of the rules have been updated by GFOA and GASB, so this new policy reflects those updates. One of the updates especially was in prior years, the length of the useful life of the asset needed to be 5 years or more to be able to capitalize it. They've now taken it down to 2.
Oh, okay.
So the dollar amount hasn't necessarily changed, but the useful life has changed drastically in that. So that's really the major change in this. And then the other item is the disposal of assets. So this actually correlates with the policy we did on the procurement rules that we did last June, a year ago. The rules around disposal of assets happen to be in the old resolution relating to procurement, and when we adopted the new resolution, that was taken out and we put it into an administrative policy instead, but we left the rules the same. So that's referenced in here.
And what will that do for us?
Nothing.
Just clean
It
it
stays
up.
the same, yeah.
I can support that.
Most of these rules, it's odd for me to see them in resolution. They're typically administrative, so that's where I'm trying to see what stuff do you guys need to really say hard line versus kind of the squishy stuff?
Councilor Parker?
And Mayor, we've had this discussion before on what really needs to be brought before us. And at the state level, there's a difference between Oregon administrative rules and the policy themselves.
Correct.
So I'm glad you bring this to us. And I just want you to flag for us when when these changes will actually provide us with things that will have an impact on us, on our constituents, as we explain them, saying, hey, why is this happening?
Yeah.
But if it's just putting them from one container of, here's what the council said to, here's an administrative rule, I'm okay with that. But just be cognizant as these changes come before us, be sure and let us know if they're going to have some impact on our constituents and the way they interact with government.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Julie, it's interesting, to Councilor Parker's point, I think when we, I think with you and then even with your predecessor, there was a lot of going through and finding these and changing them, and there was a lot of dialogue and taking, why were they resolutions, to, like you've said tonight,
right.
Why can't just staff make that call? And Councilor Parker's point, kind of less is more, like, okay, if it's a staff decision, then let's have that be a staff piece. I think one of the pieces, at least for me, and I won't, anyone else can chime in, is when we look at the financial pieces, I mean, if there are resolution items that we're changing, and it's now becoming a staff change, or it relies with an administrative change, I maybe appreciate the heads up.
Absolutely.
Of that being, that change, hey, we've come across this, we're making this administrative change because we can.
Right.
That's fine. I just, again, we're talking about the fiscal responsibility of the city, just even those kinds of heads up help us. And
Absolutely.
to that point, being able to speak to why the change, how's that impacting us as a city, and then, constituents overall, I think is a great piece to have there. So, yeah, perfect.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move we adopt Resolution 1320 and a resolution adopting updated capitalization rules and repealing Resolution 780.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Councilor Hensley and seconded by Councilor Varlick to approve Resolution 1320, resolution adopting updated capitalization rules and repealing Resolution 780. Any other comments or questions for Julie? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That carries 5-0. Thank you, Julie.
Now, next up, you have ordinance 1511. It's an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with Pioneer Property LLC for the purchase of real property and declaring an emergency. This is up for second reading and will require a roll call vote, as you heard it last meeting.
Perfect.
Yes, as you will recall, staff has been working to acquire an approximately 1 acre piece of property immediately adjacent to the Canby Utility Transit bus parking yard off of Hazeldale Avenue. You heard this discussion 2 weeks ago when we introduced the proposal and recommendation for the purchase. Purchase price is $380,000. We do have a willing seller, and we worked out the deal. Staff recommendation is to approve the ordinance authorizing the city to enter into the purchase and sale agreement, and that would open the door for me to open escrow on this property as early as tomorrow morning. My goal is to have it closed sometime during the month of August so that we have all the documentation done, the deed recorded while I'm still here, so we don't have any break in continuity.
Great, and again, this plays in a long-range strategic plan for Canby Area Transit to eventually build a building. So again, not paying rent, but actually owning the asset, and then just having that control piece over that. So that's the long-range plan for the purchase of this property. So any other comments or questions for Mr. Robinson? Okay. I'll take a motion, please.
I'll move that we adopt ordinance 1511, authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with Pioneer Property LLC for the purchase of real property and declaring an emergency.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, Tim.
Motion's been made by Councilor Height, seconded by Councilor President Dale to approve ordinance number 1511, an ordinance authorizing the city of Canby to enter into a purchase and sale agreement with Pioneer Property LLC for the purchase of real property and declaring an emergency with a roll call vote.
Counselor Height?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Counselor Hensley?
Aye.
Counselor Dale?
Aye.
Counselor Varwick?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Moving into new business. So this is where we get to make a presentation to Councilor Height. So I'm going to have you come down front.
Okay.
Got family. And talk about you down there.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I know she has more family members here, and they were waiting, they were here. So I'm going to go run out in the lobby and find them.
Oh, yes. We will pause momentarily.
Thank you. Hopefully you can phone them. For a little walk, while everybody walk too far, that's okay.
Do you want to text them real quick and tell them to get back here?
It's all right, I don't know how to. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure we can talk some more about our committees and boards and what else we want to talk about?
Yeah.
Did you see them, Joe?
Sludge removal,
Information that
cemetery.
they might have moved on to the restaurant they're going to celebrate at.
Okay. All right. So this evening is Councilor Height's last meeting. And Tracy, thank you. I thought, I must have written down a couple of things, erased them and redid it a couple of times. And so I'm just going to speak from my heart. I know 4.5 years ago, when you joined the council, at least speaking for me, we did not necessarily start off on the best foot. But I want you to know that I have appreciated you being on this council. You have always come prepared. You have been so thoughtful in your approach, in how you've handled your liaison roles, and how diligent and passionate you've been about Canby and the community as a whole. And I thank you for that. I really have appreciated you being on the council. I'm really sad to see you go. I wish that you'd stay and finish out your term, but I get it. You and I had a long conversation about just time commitment and what it means, and so I appreciate you. I really do. And I hope that we'll just call it a pause and that you'll be back maybe someday, right? And do this again. But I just wanted to present this to you tonight. So this is being presented to Tracy Height in recognition and appreciation of your 4.5 years of service on the Canby City Council and for your untiring dedication and commitment to the betterment of the city of Canby here in July of 2019. So thank you very, very much. If you'd like to say a few words, please. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Hello. I gave a longer resignation speech about 6 weeks ago in anticipation of today, but in short, I just don't have the time and energy anymore to give this job the the time and energy it really deserves. I'm busy with my work, and I really want to spend time and prioritize my evenings now with my family. And they've been pretty understanding with the distractibility, or that my lack of attention, shall we say, these last 4.5 years as I've done this job. I've given a lot to the city, and I want to start giving my evening times, more of my evening times to my kids. I would say this has been it's been a really great life experience. When I look back on this as an old lady, I hope to see this as maybe one of the top 5 of my life. It's been really pivotal to be among this council, and hopefully I've done a little bit of good for Canby along the way. I won't miss the stress so much because it's like in the back of your mind, there's always a little worry, a little conflict, you're not sure what's coming. And so I am kind of glad, I have to say, to just be able to leave that behind and be a little bit more buoyant through that. But thank you to my family for being understanding through this. And basically, even though Myron and Sophie and Monica they were here earlier, they've departed. But Eris is still here, if Eris wants to wave. Right, there we go. So thank you for doing that. And for my parents are here, and Connie. And thank you to you guys for your continued service. It's challenging. Keep doing the good work for the city. I appreciate you. So, thank you.
Thank
Mr. City Manager, is there any business on your end?
Actually, I do have one matter that I need two actually. The first is to express my personal appreciation for the opportunity to get to know Tracy better. We spent, I think, particularly in the first couple of years of your term, many hours discussing policy matters and the decision process and trying to understand, in Tracy's part, how to be a better counselor and how to better represent her constituency and what her role was. And for me, it was a wonderful opportunity to get to know you, not just as a counselor, but as our conversations evolved as a person as well. So I'll miss you.
Thank you.
And, if I may interrupt his report.
Will you yield?
Will you yield a little time to your council? I'm very, very impressed with Tracy Height's energy. I think she comes into every thing that she does as a listener, which is a huge thing. Our culture needs more listeners. She's a lifelong learner. She learns all the time, and she's voracious about it and wants to, and she actually really cares. She cares about everybody who's ever stepped up here and said anything. She actually cares. And so I never lose it. It's fantastic traits in any person.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your service.
And now back to business. Julie Blums has been working with court staff and the judge and our prosecutor and public defenders about the potential to change our court days from Mondays to Tuesdays. I sent you a note yesterday that you probably have received. Our intention is to make that transition effective October 1st. It provides a great opportunity for court staff to be better prepared to actually have a working day before they have to walk into session. And it works very well for the judge, and if I was a prosecutor, I would appreciate the last minute opportunity to prepare my cases as well. So I just wanted to give you and members of the audience a heads up and advance notice that change will occur on October 1st. I did check our charter and code, and there are no requirements that would mandate that we bring something to you in terms of a resolution or ordinance to make the date change. It's just whatever's most effective. So I want to thank Julie and Jessica for the work that they did in coordinating and collaborating and discussing with all of the affected parties. I think it's going to be a change that everyone's going to appreciate.
Great, good. I love it when government does things that make sense.
Yeah, and that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Second opportunity for citizen input. Again, anyone wants a yellow card to sound off on tonight's festivities? Seeing none. Joe, are you in charge of action review right now?
I'll give you action review.
Perfect.
Tonight, you have approved the consent agenda. You've adopted Resolution 1313. You've adopted Resolution 1320, and you've adopted Ordinance 1511.
Great. Thank you, Joe.
And there is no executive session tonight.
Call that a 2-for-1. I like it. Great. If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There you go.
Motion has been made and seconded by Councilor Height. That's her last official action. All those in favor?
Bye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Canby, good night. We are adjourned. Thank you.